So in the last class, we looked at how to run a program based on certain condition statements, basically if and else if statements. So let's try to write the next concept now. So the next concept that is very commonly used in the programming language is looping. Right? So what is looping? Now let me explain with a small example. Let's say I have a piece of code here. Let's say I have some code written here, and you want to repeat this part of the code n number of times, right? That means you want to start this code, end this code, and again go back and repeat it, right? So if you want to repeat this code n number of times, uh, you would generally go to the concept called as looping, right? Now, how do you want to repeat it? Could be based on n number of times, fixed number of times. Let's say I want to repeat it n number of times, or could be based on a certain condition. That is, I want to repeat this code as long as the user enters some value. Fine. So could be either condition based or number based. Fine. Now to take an example, let's say I want to write a program to print the hello world 5 times, just to make it a little more easier. Let's say I want to write a program to print the string hello world 5 times. So one way of writing it is I could just start my program. Right, so I start my program and I will write system.out.println and say hello world, and I will repeat it, let's say 5 times. So I want print it 5 times. I'll simply print the same statement 5 times, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll execute this and I will get the hello world 5 times, straightforward, right? Now let's say I want to repeat 100 times. So what do we do? Are we going to print this, repeat this line 100 times? Theoretically, we could. It would give you the output, but it is not obviously the most efficient way of working, right? So if you're repeating one line of code 100 times, it's an unnecessary repetition because the line of code is the same. I just want to repeat it, uh, make the code run over and over again. Fine. So that is what we are saying in the when we said we want to repeat a piece of code repeatedly, we'll use looping. So instead of print repeating the same statement 5 times, I could say I want to repeat this 5 times using a looping statement called as for. Right? So what does for do? I will say for I will initialize a variable here, integer I is equal to, it can be any variable, but it's a general practice to use I as a iteration statement. You would want to repeat this how many times as long as the value of I is less than 5. Fine. And each time you repeat this statement, I will increment the value by 1 times. I can simply say I is equal to I plus 1. All right. So what have we what have we done here? We have said start a for loop, use the variable I starting from the value 0, increase this variable by the count of 1 each time you enter the loop, and repeat this loop till the value of I is less than 5. That means as long as this statement is true, you will keep repeating it. And what do you want to repeat? You want to repeat whatever falls between this flower bracket and this flower bracket. Alright, so after we write the for statement, we open a flower bracket, write the code that we want to repeat, and close the flower bracket. Right? So let me just point out once more. This is my for statement, right? Which is being used to create the loop. Let me zoom in a little to make the highlighting easier. Right. So this part that we have here is initializing the variable. It's an integer variable. Variable name is I. Starting value is 0. Alright, we initialize the value I to 0. Each time it executes a for loop, you are going to increase the value by 1. I is equal to I plus 1, and you want to repeat this loop as long as this statement is true. Alright, so you want to repeat it as long as this statement turns out to be true. So as long as I is less than 5, we will repeat whatever is between this flower bracket and this flower bracket. I can have 1,000 line code here, does not matter. Fine. As long as it is inside between these two flower brackets, it is part of this for loop. So whatever is between this flower bracket and this flower bracket is part of this for loop. It is going to be repeated as long as this condition is true. Fine. So in this case, the condition that we are asking for is I is less than 5. Fine. So now if I execute this, what is going to happen? It is going to print the hello world 5 times. You can see the value hello world being printed here. Now just to track how it is printing, let me print the value of I also. Fine. I'll say plus I. So each time it enters the for loop, it will print the variable I. So first time it enters the for loop, I will be equal to 0, right? So let me run it once more and we'll see the loop through the output. So you can see the first time it enters I is equal to 0, it prints the value hello world, the value 0, and then increases the value of I by 1. After it increases the value of I by 1, it compares is the value I less than 5. If it is true, again come inside. So I in 0 increased by 1 becomes 1. 1 is less than 5. Yes, it is true. So it comes here, prints the value of 1. So hello world 1. Then again it increases the value of I to 2. Yes, 2 is less than 5. So hello world 2. Increase by 1. I becomes 3. 3 is less than 5. Yes, so hello world 3. Increase the value to 4. 4 is less than 5. Yes, hello world 4. Then once it prints this hello world 4, it again increases the value of I by 1. So I becomes 5 now. When this comparison is done, 5 is not less than 5. Okay, 5 is equal to 5. So this comparison becomes false. 5 is not less than 5. So as soon as this comparison becomes false, it will exit the for loop and come out of it. It will come to the line that follows after this flower bracket. Right. So this is the beginning of the flower bracket. And this is the end of the flower, end, the beginning of the for loop, end of the for loop. After this is the whatever is the statement that is following the for loop. So what is executed as part of for loop is this piece of code, whatever is falling inside the two flower brackets. Right. So now you can see the syntax here. We have initialized something, given a semicolon, given a comparison statement, given a semicolon, given an increment statement, and close the bracket. Right. So remember, it is mandatory for a for loop to have these two semicolons. Fine. So these two with this is the basic syntax. Now you could have a for loop which does not have this initialization. Maybe you initialize the variable somewhere else. It is okay, but the semicolon is required. You could have a for loop where this condition statement is being used somewhere else. That's also okay, but you still need the semicolon. You could have a for loop where you're incrementing this I somewhere else. That is also okay. But a for loop requires this semicolon and this semicolon. Without that, syntax is not complete. So we will write that kind of for loop maybe a little later. So for now, let's stick to the basic syntax. So initialization of for loop, condition check, and then increment value. For now, these three are the mandatory requirements for a for loop to work properly. Fine. So and within this for loop, you can within this bracket, whatever you put will be executed by the uh, program repeatedly as long as this statement turns out to be true. Right? So let's say I want to write a program to uh, print the first 10 integer numbers, 0 to first integer number. So what I'll do, all I have to do now is start from I will print till 0 to 10. That is 0 to 10, 0. So it stops before 10 because as soon as 10 becomes equal I becomes equal to 10, this condition becomes false. So I'm printing the integer values. So maybe I'll say int values are, and I'll give a space, and if I execute this now, I will be able to see the output, right? So you can see int values are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It stops at 9. As soon as I becomes equal to 10, the loop ends, right? So this is the basic syntax of executing a for loop, right? So initialize a value, do a comparison statement, and then give an increment value. Simple. Fine. So using this concept, let's try to write some programs. Hope the basic syntax is correct. You can have small variations to this. As I said, I could have different places of initialization, comparison, and increment. We will experiment with that as we write the codes. But the syntax, basic syntax is this. Now, this is something you can, some of you might get confused. People who used to see primarily that why is the initialization happening inside the for loop. It is okay. Java takes it. You can initialize it wherever you want. You can initialize it before also. I can have for int I, the int I initialize before, and use the int here, remove the int here. That's also okay. But generally it's not needed because this variable I existence is required only as long as the for loop is there. So once the for loop is over, the I is no longer required. So it's a more memory oriented or better, more efficient way of writing the looping, that you discard the variable once the variable is no longer required. So if you write it inside this for loop, the variable is alive only between these two flower brackets. Once you get out of this flower bracket, this variable is no longer present. Alright, so that's the basic syntax and basic uses of for loop. So let's write some programs using this to understand the usage a little better, right? Thank you.